Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sacred Remembering. I'm Sarah Poet, and today's episode is a solo episode, and it's very much going to be a bit of an update, energy update, personal update, and I think it's going to be a shorter episode today. Just a moment ago, I was scheduled to be a guest on a podcast, and I almost canceled it. I was like, this doesn't exactly feel aligned, but then I looked into, some of what he was doing and I was like, okay, I'll try it out. And then he was a no-show. Like he didn't show up to the appointment that he had, we had scheduled for his own podcast. And while I was sitting there, I was like, I'm always like, I'll give it 5 minutes. No more. I'll give it 5 minutes. And I was sitting there and I was really feeling this Christic grid, like the Christic golden grid. And I was like, wow, I mean, this is incredible energy. But it wasn't for his podcast, it was for mine. So I knew that I needed and wanted to record an episode for you and just kind of take a pulse on some of the things that are happening. And so it's really good to be here with you today in a new energy. That Christic grid is always there, but these are new and improved energetics. Maybe you can feel them, maybe you will feel them over time, but things, are shifting, are improving, and they can be for every single one of us if we are paying attention, if we are aligning to the truth of who we are, if we are aligning to nature and creation and like not all of the other nonsense that is going on out there. So the first thing that I am feeling to talk about today is frequency, attunement, frequency, alignment. Frequency is everything. Energy is everything. Like these are things that you'll hear kind of in the New Age spirituality. I remember like a period of time where I was like, and what does that even mean? Like, what does it mean that frequency is actually everything? And I would say right now, personally, frequency attunement is my practice above and beyond anything else. This is what I am attuning to. And I've said it before, but I have a very quiet life. Like I attune to the energetics that are going on in the field, that are, clearing from my own life, etc. Not so much everybody else's business, unless like I literally have a client paying me to attune to their field. I don't want to be caught up in everybody else's business, right? Like I want to become and I want to feel really good. Like that's part of the thing we're doing on the planet, right? Is becoming who you are and feeling really freaking good in that process. So, for example, recently I just stopped posting on Instagram. I stopped interacting with Instagram and I deleted it off my phone and I gave it this like 2-week trial. And I was like, that feels really good. So this is an example of you can feel the frequency rub in your life. Like you can feel where there's a rub that is unpleasant. You might feel constricted when you interact with it. You might lose yourself a little bit to it. Like that like grimy rub of like this frequency isn't actually working for me. And I started to feel that with Instagram, took myself off of that platform. Oh my gosh, I have to tell you this other thing. So side note, so I was off for 2 weeks, right? My assistant posted a couple of posts but I wasn't really interacting at all. It was off of my phone. Then for one day, I put it on my phone to make this post that was like, I am not an influencer. I might talk more about that in a moment, but this was like my goodbye post and then I just deleted the app back off of my phone. That day, that whole, maybe even 2 days, my brain was doing this it felt like ADHD. It felt like chaos. It was like I was thinking of all these posts, like all of these quippy things I could have said, right? and they were like flooding me. It was almost like this fear program of like, oh, what happens when you try to get out? And then actually yesterday, I was talking to Coco Oya Sienna Ray, who is my next podcast guest. So I recorded that episode yesterday before this one. And I was telling her about this phenomenon that had happened that was so freaking weird, because it was like when I declared that I was done, I'm breaking up with you, Instagram, right? Like I declared it, which that decision really, it was like a business and energy decision. It was like, this is not a frequency match anymore, right? That was the point. But when I said it out loud and I was like, I'm breaking up with you, then there was all of this energy that came out of nowhere that was so freaking weird. And what Coco said was like, she said, when you're just done in a relationship and then the other person is like, fuck, they're really done. And then they go crazy for a minute of like, let me try all of these things to get them like back involved. I feel like there was this psyop, like literally impacting my brain. It was like, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? I never had any question. I'm very clear. This is not a frequency match for me anymore at this time. Like maybe later my frequency will change again and I will like be excited about engaging, but I'm not even excited about engaging there right now. So, but like, yeah, whatever those invisible tendrils were, which we should all question, holy shit, they acted up after I was like, no, I'm really done. So let me speak about like that last post that I made too on Instagram. This is so trivial. I can't even believe I'm talking about posts on the podcast, but it is the world that we live in. So thing was kind of coming through in the last few weeks. And a friend recently said to me, she's like, wow, you really move some energy when you make a post. And it's true. And that kind of reminded me of like my original days in online and social media and entrepreneurship. Like I was just moving energy and that's what people were feeling. So that's good. Like in a way I'm back, right? I'm like kind of out of productivity mode, way more in alignment, way more in my own frequency. And so now like when I am sharing, the energetics are moving. So this, I guess it like became this awareness that, inner and outer, right? So my own behavior was like, yeah, thinking of the thing to say, right? In the online business, I'm breaking up with these energetics, right? All over the place, because it's like you get into this pattern and habit when you engage with these current systems and online business. And like, I didn't know really how to run an online business when I started 7 years ago. By the way, I'm like, in March, I ended a 7-year cycle in my business. So much has been changing since March, like so much. And I'm just in it and I'm attuning and spending a lot of time in quiet and respecting the energetics that are arising. And so I got frustrated with like this template of like, you go out, you post and you post and you post and you produce content. And somehow that's supposed to like result in people coming to you and you making a living. And I gave that my all, like, and I gave a lot. And sometimes it resulted in right reciprocity, and sometimes, I guess maybe most of the time, it didn't. And then stuff happened in my personal life, but I was like trying to keep it going. I mean, I've talked about this in the last 3 years on this podcast. And so like when you have a complex PTSD reaction to like really crazy interdimensional shit, and like you're in that and you're still trying to keep up with things and move forward, it's like there was a stress that was present in like, okay, I'm showing up. I'm continuing to, like put myself out there, but it really wasn't the right energy. I apologize. And it was also the best I could do. And I love myself either way. We have to in this adventure, in this sacred remembering path. So yeah, it was like I felt underappreciated, I guess, a lot of the time. Like people liked, my thoughts and my content, but like they weren't seeing me as a practitioner. right? And that really was such a big part of this energetic shift in the last like 2-3 months, where it was like, I'm a practitioner and I'm not an influencer, and I don't care to be an influencer. I care to have impact. But, what I say to you on this podcast or what I put in a post on any one of the platforms, if that impacts you, that is minuscule compared to what happens when you step into my space as a healer, as a channel, as an oracle, as a professional, right? So I have this like a big toolkit and this multi-dimensional approach to actually helping people, right? And I know that thought leadership is a part of who I am. But I guess it got a little lonely, to be honest. It got like, I'm just supposed to keep, showing up and shoveling out the content. And it was like, somehow I've done this wrong, because this is not the vibe that I want to continue with. So that's been so beautiful to drop the way that I was relating to, I guess, people through these platforms. I'll just share in case it's helpful to anyone that the other thing that I've just really done in the last 3 months, and I don't think I'm done yet, but I think definitely on the other side of like big transitions, is that I just got more clear on what I do want to do with my time as a practitioner, how I want to help people. The last like year or so really has been a journey back to love, like big love frequencies. And so, how do I want to interact and be loving? And again, experience right reciprocity in what I'm doing and how I'm serving, and really cleaning up like my part of just what wasn't healthy about energetics around exchanges. One of my favorite topics in the world is resources and exchange. And so I'm always learning and developing, in my own life and experience as well, and really evolving. And you all know, probably, if you're listening to this, and hello, if you are new, it is so awesome that you're here. But, I've been on this personal quest too of like dismantling the ways that, I'll just, for lack of a better word, and to just like make the point clear, patriarchal energetics, these like these inherently extractive energetics in this old paradigm. I've just been on this personal quest over the last 7-8 years. Really, that was like what was actually going on when I jumped into this entrepreneurial life was, what does it look like to truly reclaim the feminine? What does it look like to truly have healthy internal masculine feminine balance? Or balance, harmony, integration, right? Because it's not always a perfect balance. What does it actually look like to heal your wounding with mother and father? What does it actually look like to reunite with Holy Mother, Holy Father, Mother, Father, God? What does it actually look like to, resurrect your Christic template as like a pillar of light on this planet? On and on and on. And what does it actually look like to be in right relationship and right exchange? I still feel that I have, that's a learning ground. Like I feel excitement as I say that, because I've done a lot in the sovereignty space and on my own, and looking at the energetics and looking at the field. And there's much more relational pieces for me to open into, which I'm excited about now. And there's like one more piece there. What does it look like to be in right relationship with prosperity and money and resource, which I define broadly and differently than others? You can find that in recent episodes. And so I've been on this journey of exploring these new earth energetics and how we actually template them inside of our systems and lives as women. So I'm not exactly sure where I was going with that after all of that explanation. This to say, I guess it's been a journey, and I'm happy with where I am currently finding myself. But I do want to circle back around to what I was saying about frequency attunement, because I think it is one of the most important things that we can be doing right now in this world that is just trying to make you afraid. It is trying to get in your head. It is trying to get at your thoughts. It is trying to literally tell you what you should be doing and posting on the internet and making that like your central focus, as I just shared in my example of like, was I actually hijacked for that? What was that? So the outside world would totally prefer to tell you what to think about and to tell you what to do and to tell you what to be afraid of. That is a massive strategy that is going on the planet right now. Here's who you should be mad at because of the decisions that they're making. Here's like who you should be afraid of. And here's what you should do as a result of being afraid. As a result of being afraid, you should trust us, right? This is everywhere. Please look at that. Please look at independent media and not just mainstream media, even, so-called liberal mainstream media. It is feeding you the bait to get you to invest your energy, specifically your fear energy and your mind, your mental attention. And it is prompting you all the time to invest in its agenda. And then there goes your fucking life force, right? And I dropped the F-bomb there because it's like, not that your life force is that, it's everything. Like it is everything. So don't give it away. Okay. So I have, in the last few years, I have experienced the actual experience of healing mind control. Now, I'm not saying I'm totally healed. I'm saying, okay, I didn't even know it was really there. Like, the more I found out about how I was influenced early on and how my father was actually groomed himself. He was inside of the SRA, the satanic ritual abuse cult. Horrid, horrid things happened to him. I can say this kind of more clearly now, although it's difficult to sum up. And I just read the book Dinner for Vampires, which was about a smaller cult that called themselves a family. And after reading that book, I was like, my family was run like a cult. Like that, my father was raised in a cult and he ran the family like a cult with so much mind control. So it is still questionable to me how much actual ritual abuse I incurred or experienced. And I know that my own brain is still protecting me from remembering some of it, or I don't know how much of it. But I right now in this moment, as I'm actually saying these things out loud, I know and trust that I needed to get through these ingrained patterns of mind control and liberate that before I could know the rest, we're always standing in the truth of who we are. We're always regaining. But, if I'm to live more into the truth of who I am, and I feel that that is blossoming right now, right? This joyful, abundant version of myself that I haven't seen in a while. And I've never seen me like this. Praise God. So, and what does that look like? I can just kind of hear that question in the field. Like, what am I talking about when I'm talking about mind control? The left side of my head and brain literally had cranial patterns, from fear, like diminishment of self, just really wild. Like I've been working on the cranial structure, the fascial networks, all of this, sometimes in sessions, but most of the time by myself, like healing incrementally every single day. Mind control can look like being dependent on something in the external and just being so afraid to sever yourself from that.
It can look like, emotional abuse patterns. It can have a lot of impacts in feminine and masculine relations, right? Because our first or our imprints about what mother is, what father is so distorted when it is combined with abusive patterns and, when people seek to take your power. So mind control has a lot of tactics, especially something like satanic ritual abuse. That's the worst that it gets, right? So a lot of tactics to repress the human, to break their confidence, to break their source connection, to make them way more afraid than in touch with love. I'm going to pause and think of some more. Like these feelings of ingrained dependency, right? Because whenever there's mind control, there's like a reason that someone else wants you to think something. So you know who else is doing this? What else is doing this? Hollywood, government, global structures, like those empower, like the power systems, power elites, etc. It's all, gosh, there's mind control everywhere. It's everywhere. Whew. This this is a much bigger thing because it's this time on the planet for, this is a time of sovereignty. This is the time of the return of Christ consciousness, the crystal grid on the planet, each of us remembering our source connection. It's time to really boot out those that have been stealing power, those that are satanic and their behavior, their greed, the way they hurt children, the way they manufacture war, etc. Like that evil, the time is up on that. And so we are regaining more and more and more of our sovereignty. And as we do, we help to build the sovereign grid on the planet. Like we actually help to anchor more of this Christic consciousness and Christic frequencies on the planet and to rebuild the architecture of what is good and right and true. And so I just made a big leap there. But that's what I've been doing for the last many years. And I know that some of you are too. And I know that some of you are like just starting, and every single bit of where we are on our own path is so perfect. Like there's no late to the party, right? There is this moment right now. And how are we protecting our frequency? How are we protecting our energy? How are we aligning to source creation? How are we saying fuck no to that which is satanic, that which is trying to grab our energy, etc.? And like, again, the way you'll know is that the more of your true self, your source connected self that comes online, we'll want that frequency. That frequency feels amazing. That frequency feels like more freedom. That frequency feels like, oh my gosh, this is my stride. This is who I'm meant to be, right? And the old feels like there's a lot of suffering in it. There's a lot of power struggles, etc. And we just have to keep going. We integrate. And the more that we integrate source, not just the light, right? Like new age spirituality is like love and light, not just the light, but like actual source energy, which is, yes, it is light, but it is also the thing that helps to rectify the architecture of creation. So as we embody more and more and more of that, what is not that will be naturally like popped out of our field. Like literally, like the podcast that I was supposed to be on today, it wasn't that frequency at all. And I was like preparing for it, being like, okay, wait, what did I say 4 years ago? So no, that wasn't allowed to happen today. It actually popped out of my field. So friends, how do you tend to your frequency? Well, you'll hear me talk about physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, right? And this is not about being perfect. This is about meeting yourself at your own next level every single day. And especially right now, because shit is real. It's not shit. The best stuff is not shit at all, but it is real. And we are being called forward now to do this more and more ever and to align with the truth of who we are. And so, what are you putting into your body? What are you ingesting as far as food, media, people in your life, thoughts? What are you permitting into your field? How are you actually nurturing the the amplification of your own field right now? Loving it. And I go through stints. Some of you know that I go through stints with this, but I am waking up between like 3 and 4 in the morning and doing Kunalini Yoga for 90 minutes. Then I'm doing like intuitive weightlifting. Most mornings I'm also getting in the sauna and doing a big like medicinal sweat, like probably 4 to 5 times a week. I'm doing that right now. And these are the priorities. Like this is, not optional. And it feels so freaking good that it's not hard to choose that. Right. But, I've been in sessions recently with people who feel really, really stuck. And I just want to say, I so get that. I so get, oh my gosh, I'm showing up and nothing's changing yet. I'm showing up and nothing's changing yet. And I did that literally for years, like the last few years, as I was moving these imprints, what I just called mind control, etc. Like what deep, deep layers, y'all, because I had already done like all the trauma healings and spent so many years in all of that stuff. And I was really pretty awake when these other layers like really hit. So I get the feeling of I'm showing up. Why aren't things getting better? And here's what I want to, and that's a great segue because I want to talk about when you are down and out, when you are quote unquote stuck, when you are still in a trauma response, the ways that we know to look for the answers are usually not what the answers actually are. I mean, it's wild. And if you've ever done psilocybin, which I have a lot of thoughts about, I think it's really good to be careful with all of that and not do it with the wrong person, et cetera, et cetera. But I won't go into that right now. But if you've ever done that, like the reason that people do that is to open your mind to experiences that you wouldn't otherwise have and like realizations that you wouldn't otherwise think about. And so that's the difference in frequency. So when you are traumatized, struggling, like in it and in the mud, the ways that you can conceive of solutions, in my experience, are usually not the things that actually become the solutions. So, but we can't like get there from there, if that makes sense. Like we can't see the new solution because we're still in the old struggle. So the best thing to do is to continually attune your frequency, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, every single day. What is my next level? What is my, I don't love the word next level. What is my next edge? What am I naturally being called toward? And then do that. And there is an intelligence within you and within your soul and the way your soul naturally is aligned to source creation, that there is a remembrance that happens more and more and more as you say goodbye to what is not working, say yes to what is, and to continue to value your energy and your resources and your own alignment to who you truly came to be. And then this question, we all ask ourselves this question: what am I supposed to do? This becomes a question that we can ask ourselves with a couple of different tones. Okay. So when we are struggling, we ask ourselves this question: what am I supposed to do? What is the next thing? Come on, like show me, universe, show me God. What is this next thing? What do I have to do? What do I have to do? That's the tone. What do I have to do? And we all know this question. I know this question so deeply. I know this question and how we ask this in suffering, when something goes wrong, when we feel like we can't win. We're like, what do I have to do to make something go right? Right. And that's where we're in performance. We're in, like this performance orientation. Like, if I do X, then I'll be rewarded with Y. I lost my letters there for a second. So if I do this, then it will lead to this. And, that's this programming about like being good, right? Which we learn from churches and culture. Like, if you're good, then you can have reward, maybe, if you're good long enough, if you obey, right? And so there is another way to ask this question and to dance with the universe and with your own frequency, and with God and with source and this template of creation, which is more of a like really heartfelt and devotional ask. And then attune the subtle, I'm not even going to say it's listening, it's like the subtle motivation. Okay, the subtle motivation. So when we are more in alignment with creation, it's not performance based, to do list based, it's frequency based. And the more that we care for our frequency, at the same time, your ability to hear in the subtle realms is going to improve. So you're going to get a hunch, you're going to get an inspiration. So recently, here's an example. Do y'all know that my very first degree was a sustainable agriculture degree? Like, I was going to solve world hunger, y'all. That's what I was going to do. I had a minor in women's studies in my undergrad, and I designed my own liberal arts major in science, technology, and society, and I studied all things sustainable ag, and I was going to solve world hunger. And so I love soil, love being in soil, and always thought that I would do more of that. And then I went into education. I gardened with kids. Anyway, that's like a little bit of my old story. And so now I live on a 4th floor apartment. Like, I have a balcony that might be like 4 by 10. Okay. And this is like my little patch of earth. And in the summertime, the sun hits it for over half the day. And so I have all these plant pots because I've been obsessed with plants my whole life. And so they're all lined up on the balcony. It's like, it would be a little bit crazy to fill them all, because then winter will come and the inside light is not as good. So it's like, what am I doing? So anyway, the point of me telling you this was that I had this nudge to like go get a bunch of plants and actually like fill this up, right? And I was like driving to the plant store on a Sunday morning, and I had all of these negative voices in my head that was like, my gosh, is this necessary? This is extravagant. This is not the best use of funds. This is like every single freaking negative thing that I could think of, right? And then like this divine voice was like, Sarah, stop. And why are you doing this? And I was paused at a red light, and I was like, I felt the overwhelming joy. Like, I was not overwhelming, overcome. I was overcome with this. This is what life is supposed to feel like. Like, I just get to put all of these little succulents, little arrangements on my patio because it brings me so much freaking joy. And I get to do that, right? And so doing that, and then sitting with the plants. Like, sometimes I'll repot the plants, right? Like, this is my little patch of earth right now. And so that frequency from the plants in the planters and my relationship to it is making me come alive in a sacred remembering way, right? It's nurturing this frequency of me that loved to put my hands in the dirt, when I was an 18-year-old in college, etc. And, sacred remembering, right? We talk a lot about like the things that we always knew were alive inside of us and rekindling them. So that would be a wonderful way for you to practice actually upgrading your frequency. Last year I did a lot of playing with clay, which was also like another interest in college. And then I ended up getting pregnant in college. And I was just talking to my son about this. He's my second child, but it was like there was this crossroads, right? Like I was doing this environmental thing, but then I also got like a little job in the college ceramic studio. And I was like, I think if I hadn't gotten pregnant and left that college, I actually would have become a ceramic artist. And so that then I hadn't done throughout my adult life very much. And so that was a remembering, right? But as I was with the clay, this remembering is happening. And the frequencies that we're bringing back, y'all, are within us. It is the nature of us, right? So yes, we can go to a sound healing, things like that. We can like listen to frequencies on YouTube. Those things can certainly be helpful. They can maybe like pop some stuff out of our aura for us. But what we're talking about is actually like building our own frequency and booting out. And this is why I love Kundalini Yoga so, so much. Not like I've only ever practiced with Rama Yoga out of LA and New York, and they have a streaming service. I've only ever practiced with them. Some of them now broke off into another practice that I'm sure is some of the most magical teachers went off on their own. And I cannot think of the name of that practice. But my point is that these are real deal teachers. This is not like I'm not getting my Kundalini Yoga off of YouTube, though I'm sure there's great teachers out there. I really take this very seriously. It's been a practice since COVID actually is when I found it. And nothing helps the frequency of your actual aura more than Kundalini Yoga. Like there's not anything else. And it helps your auric projection and how people perceive you and how much prosperity you can hold and all of that. And so I'm not necessarily saying that it is the only thing. I am not a yogi, but it is a massive and important practice in my own life for strengthening what they call the 10 bodies, strengthening the aura. And literally, it helps you to identify the tendrils of mind control, of the frequencies that do not serve you. And like you'll be doing Kundalini Yoga and you're just like in it. And it's weird, y'all. Like you breathe and you put your eyes in certain ways and you move your body in all these ways. It's a science, okay? It's not like Hatha Yoga. It is a science and you are moving and it is just kicking out the frequencies that don't serve you and that aren't aligned. But the fascinating thing that happens that I'm just like, whoa, every time it happens is that these memories will float up that you're like, whoa, where did that come from? Like, I don't think I had thought of my cousin's wedding since it happened and I was in middle school. Like, it was like gone from, I never think about it, right? And that came up the other day. It was like, whoa, that happened. Sometimes it's like this memory and you're like in your middle school hallway or something like that. This morning, I was doing an exercise and I was going for it. And there was this memory and the feeling, right? Because it's like the memory and the feeling, and they get stuck in you and in your aura and in your body. And it was this feeling of being in my grandmother's house before I was 5 years old. And so there was something that happened in each of these circumstances that got stuck. I've moved so many big traumas at this point. So it's like fascinating that these little things come up and just clear. And I don't have to think of the story. I don't have to think of why. I don't have to think of how it was holding me back. I just do the work and get it the heck out because that's what's important, right? So I hope that in this completely unplanned about frequency and yoga, that there is something here for you that you can take and apply to your life and your sacred remembering path. Okay, so I told you that this podcast was going to be just some updates, and I'm glad that that was the intuitive way that this episode has gone so far. I want to talk about this podcast for a moment and just presence some things that like I'm aware of, but I want to put it out there. And I know that not everyone who listens to this podcast is going to be listening to this particular part 46 minutes in, but at least energetically, I will have said these things. So this podcast over the year, I mean, I love it. Y'all, I love this podcast. I love that I was given this mission. I love the energetics that hold this podcast. Like I am in deep, deep reverence. And I always have been. And many times I've wanted to stop it and it just kind of takes another form. I'll continue it until I'm told otherwise. And there are a couple of things about it. So not everything that we need to do right now is about talking. And I think based on a lot of the things that I've already said in this podcast, that should be clear. But sometimes I think, is a podcast appropriate? Because, like I was saying, I don't want to be an influencer. I don't want to be a talking head. I have when we go into the multidimensional energetics of the regenerative earth space, it's like, that's what we need to be doing, right? So right now for me, it's a both and. Excuse me. And earlier this year, when the podcast was like, okay, after the hurricane in Asheville, it was like, Sarah, start doing this every week again. And I was hosting live podcasts. And then if it was a solo episode, I was trying to do an energy transmission inside of the episode. And that didn't exactly last for a couple of reasons, guest interviews, I had other things to say, etc. But this to say that we really do need to be sitting in silence and in communion with the frequencies that are here on the planet to support us at this time. So much of the agenda that we do experience around hijacks on our own energy, I said this earlier, it's telling you where to look. It's telling you what to give your attention to. So we have to literally unplug from those distractions and get silent. We must be going into silence, into not even necessarily like formal meditation, right? Although, I don't know, maybe you need some of that to kind of like train your ability to sit still. You'll know. But what is your relationship with silence? It's very important. And then Coco and I talk about this a lot in the next episode, but as women, we're feeling into our bodies. This is where so much of our intelligence is coming from. This is where so much of us knowing what to do next is coming from. That question, what am I to do, is not coming from the mind and the mind trying to make sense of everything that it is seeing. And it's not even coming from the mind trying to hear the spiritual information, which I think we get caught up on as well. Like, what am I supposed to do? Just whisper it in my ear, right? And sometimes it comes that way, but more and more and more all the time, I'm sitting in silence, tuning into my body, and then I'm being taken into these deep, deep feminine spaces. And that is what I call the regenerative feminine spaces. And that is where I channel. So I do have monthly regenerative feminine events, and that is what we're doing in those events. I'll just mention here too that there's a visioning circle that I'm also holding once a month. So those are now regular. You can find that on my events page on my website. Yeah, bringing some rhythm to that. So there's some predictability to that, because we really, really do need to be sitting in silence and communing with our intelligence in that silence, our feminine ways of knowing, and also all of these new things that were being shown around the feminine as it becomes more and more anchored and like
present and available on the planet. So we're not just remembering the feminine through, yeah, like these ideas, these grokking these ideas about what the feminine is supposed to be. We're like actually becoming it and then actually living our lives very differently as we embody that. And getting back to the podcast itself, over the years, I have interviewed so many incredible people. And when I first started, I was interviewing a lot of people who had made big changes in their lives, like jumping out of a career and starting a healing business, those kinds of things and those kinds of stories. And I was not discerning about like the medicine that the women held. It was more of a celebration, just step into your truth. Now on the podcast, and this has been true for a while, so you may have picked up on it, but also having to do with my own path, realizing the architecture of creation, that these things like Jesus and Mary Magdalene, like the return of the Sisterhood of the Rose, etc. It painted so much of the time like almost in an unfounded way. Like what I mean by that is like airy fairy, excuse me, like new age. So this is not new age. This is not what we're doing. Although I think before, like, 2019, 2020, like you could have called some of the content kind of new agey. And now what this is there is a sovereign template for creation. And women particularly play a really, really important part of this because obviously the feminine is making her comeback, through you. And we're also resurrecting the architecture of creation, which I've talked a lot about in various episodes. But that is also that's what I'm doing in private work. That's what I'm doing in group work. I'm helping to heal. I am humbly, let's be clear, helping to heal and resurrect the architecture of the energy body that was tampered with over all of these lifetimes of everything we went through. And all of these attempts to have us forget that we are direct descendants of source, that we have this direct source connection, that there's literally nothing between us and source, and that we can recover that. And when I go into quantum field work with a client, looking in those multidimensional spaces, and honestly, every single time I'm guided as to exactly where to look. And I don't want to get too far into this right now, but like the problems that we have in this lifetime, and so many of us are aware that the problems that we're aware of, we've been dealing with for a really long time, right? So we are addressing them at the level of the template of creation, which is just, again, very humbling that I'm even saying those words. But it is really my plan and my purpose to help women to resurrect that level of knowing and sovereignty and resource sovereignty. And I'm going to be talking about resources more and more and more. I'm feeling this honing of my own purpose around that. And, I've known that for a while, but a lot of things had to clean up and fall away and the energy become more available. And if you've been listening to this podcast, you've been hearing me talk about Heartland for many years, and I've literally been living this journey in front of you all to like move through this suffering that keeps us from our prosperity, our destiny, and like trusting in the new earth template, the Heartland template. And that is the heaven on earth template that we are, again, each a part of really truly bringing back. So everything that I'm saying here is for that. There's nothing airy fairy or like new agey or your latest spiritual this and that. And that it's also actually why I kind of sometimes have a hard time with consistency and like, okay, we're running a business now, because I am so in my own process of feeling what's going on all the time. Like I am a feeler. And so I'm feeling and attuning and moving the energy through. And
Yeah, recently just like there's so much space that's been created and my life has a lot of space in it. And I'm at this part where I'm very well aware to not get busy, to not busy myself, right? Ooh, I just laughed because I said this was going to be a short podcast and I looked up and it says 57 minutes. I'm going to wrap up here. I'm aware to not fill this space from that scampering. Oh my God, what am I to do? Right. And I was doing a lot of that before. And I know that it doesn't work. It does not help to actually do what we came to do. And so, yeah, in this spaciousness, it's like plant the plants, right? Like, what is nature like saying to you? Plant the plants, go lay in the sun, go take your dog into the mountains. The other day, I knew a rainstorm was coming and I specifically hiked in the rain, which my dog did not love as much as I did. But I had this super cathartic experience of like the rain washing something away, right? So, in the spaciousness, doing what naturally arises, what that natural spark is, trusting that that's enough. So, I think I was saying about the podcast. We're going to keep going. I've added the structure of the like twice a month we're meeting for public energy events and visioning. One is me channeling. The other is group participation in the visioning circles. And I know that more will be coming. My one-on-one work is just so beautiful and honed. And I'm listening to see if more wants to be honed. But if you have been thinking about working with me, it is a really beautiful time because there's just so much purity in the space and so much love. And so I welcome you to reach out to me. I do not do single sessions. I had to say no more to that. I had to, because I would make exceptions, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. I love the deep dive. I also I do better, to be quite honest, with like when income comes in bigger portions as a projector, as like the way that I use my energy, it does not work for me to move around and do a lot quickly for like a little bit of money here and there. I'm not a generator type, that it does not work for me. So I am holding a high caliber of one-to-one work. It always has been a high caliber, and it's the field is clear. Yeah, and I'm in such a loving space to welcome anyone in who wants to talk with me about that one-on-one container. And working together that way. So totally did not expect to talk for an entire hour, but I am glad that I showed up. I'm glad that the other podcast guy did not show up. And yeah, I'm going to continue to come back to Sacred Remembering, to make these podcasts. Not every single guest that I have on the podcast, I won't agree with everything they say. Maybe I've been reflecting on this. Maybe even I'll begin saying, actually, I don't agree with that, right? Because I think that we need to have that both and. So I respect everyone that I invite onto the podcast. I may not agree with them. So it's not necessarily like Sarah Poet is telling you this, right? But you've heard conversations about women's remembering, and we all remember somewhat differently, and we have our own codes, right? So anything that you hear here on this podcast, you also have to filter through your own system and say, does that resonate with where I am right now? Does that feel like truth to me? I've definitely said things on this podcast that later I evolved in my understanding, right? So like part of me would be like, whoa, that was embarrassing. But again, we keep showing up. So I try to model that. But not everyone who is invited as a guest is going to be like saying the same things that I am. Do y'all know that I get so many invitations or like requests to be on Sacred Remembering, like so freaking many. And that's cool in a way, because this podcast has been around for a long time. I think it's in the top 3% of all podcasts. So that's amazing because it's just been me behind my laptop making this whole thing happen all of these years. And so it's cool that that is a success in that way. And this is not a popularity contest. Like, people reach out to me who have like a gazillion followers and they're like, we can't wait to promote your podcast to all our gazillion followers. But the spirituality is new age or flat or basic as fuck. And I'm not going to have that person on this podcast. I just got loud about that. But it's like, this is not for everyone. So I really want you to know as a listener that if you're resonating with this, this is sacred space. And this is within the energetics of the retemplating into the new paradigm. And that this is held by very sacred energetics that is way beyond me. Way, way beyond me. And so the people that I invite onto this podcast are the people that I actually want to talk to. Like, imagine that. And that's, for the last few years, that's how it's been. Like, I'll see something on the internet, or I'll know someone, or I'm friends with someone, and I'm like, hey, do you want to come have a conversation about that? And if you listen to the podcasts that have been going on this year, I think that you will agree that that is where the magic is. So please keep listening if you want. And the next episode is a long one because Coco and I could talk a long time, and she just wrote a book, so we're celebrating that, and we are remembering specifically the mother, the sacred feminine, in the next episode. So thank you for listening to this, and these are really, really big, important times, and this is a little bit of my update, and I hope that this finds you all well and blessed and really, really honoring your own path and your own soul and your own energy right now, because above anything else, that is what matters: your sovereignty, your soul, your reconnection with source, and you doing what you came to do on this planet. So I'm here if I can support you, and I love you, and I will see you next week.